This one more philosophical comedy question. Like how much of your writing is geared towards, oh, this will get them versus I think this is funny. I'm going to put this in for my story to flow, because you do a really great job at, I'm sure you've worked on it, but you do a really, really great job at telling a story and flowing. I just watched Not Fancy right before we started this. And, you were just effortlessly being able to dance between topics, but, are you telling a joke to make them laugh, or, how much of that do you balance?
It always starts with me.
Yeah.
If it's funny. I consider saying it on stage. And also, if I think it's funny and it's relatable, forget it.
Yeah.
Once I figure out the rhythm to this, I'm about to get them.
Yeah.
So it starts with me always. I think this is funny.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell this on stage because I think this is funny and it's relatable. Or you start finding how to make it more relatable.
All right.
So if it's something that's kind of very specific to you, think about how others can relate to it and go down that angle instead of just, okay. And don't get me wrong. We always write material based on our own lives. The more specific it is to your life, the more nobody can say, oh, you stole that from so-and-so.
Right.
What are you talking about? This is my life. I
Right.
literally spelled out my life for you.
Right.
But within that, if I'm talking about my, for instance, my joke from my special, Mahalo and Goodnight, I do material about my husband and I's relationship. And now we're a little opposite to where he loves fashion and shopping. I do not. And typically it's the other way around.
Yeah.
And so the joke that I say about that, I say, my husband loves to go shopping. I love to sit outside the store with the rest of the husbands. So it's specific to me because most women's husbands don't love to go shopping.
Right.
That's very specific to me. But what is relatable is everyone can visualize the guy tired waiting for his wife while she's still shopping. So he's sitting outside on the little bench, the outlets or whatever. And either three dudes out there waiting for their husband for their wife inside Victoria's Secret.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that imagery, that is super relatable to so many people. Mm-hmm. And the funny part about it is, one, it's relatable. Like, oh my God, my husband does wait for me outside of Victoria's Secret. Two, it's funny because you imagine me sitting there with a bunch of dudes waiting for my husband to come. So it's super specific, but super relatable.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the coolest things I saw you on was Around the Horn. Again, growing up, a dream of mine to be on Around the Horn. What was that first time like? And what is that experience like? Now, because you're going from now reporter to a personality at this point, right?
Yeah. And that was really hard for me, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And, it's something that I'm still working on because I'm not totally comfortable with the TV aspect. I feel like I have a decent enough personality and I can have these conversations with you because I know you or are people off camera. But then all of a sudden when you're sitting in that chair, it's just a totally different dynamic. And you have to think in sound bites and you have to think quippy. And for me to translate the natural Emily Kaplan to TV Emily Kaplan, I want them to be the same. And I'm not quite there yet. But yeah, so they called me. So the first time I was on was May 2019, which is about a year ago. And they probably called me a month or two before that. They're like, hey, your name has come up. Would you ever be interested in being on the show? I was like, yeah, of course. And they're like, okay, well, in the spring, people's schedules get busy and we sometimes need people. So we'll let you know. I was like, great. I remember they called me. I was covering the NHL playoffs and they're like, what do you think about being on next week? And I was petrified. And you have to be in a certain city. They do it in Boston, DC, New York, Chicago, Miami, LA.
Yeah, the major cities where they have
studios there.
Yeah.
And I remember I was in Columbus to cover it. I'm like, I'm in Columbus, I can't do it. Even though I know if I ask my boss, hey, can I fly home to Chicago or can I go to New York? They wouldn't let me do it.
Yeah.
But I was coming up with any excuse not to because I was too scared.
Yeah.
And then they asked me again. And I remember thinking if I say no again, I'm done, right?
Yeah.
You just have to suck it up and do it at some point.
Yeah.
So I did it and it was awesome. It was exhilarating. It was fun. And every time after I record, and I've done only about a dozen or 15 episodes at this point, I always like feel great, but I'm like, damn, I wish I was just like a little more natural. So like, you get better with every rep. But it's all about reps. And it's also scary because you don't know, like if you mess up once, maybe they'll never call you back. Like I never have like an understanding of where I stand in the, big ecosystem. I think they're trying to groom me that eventually I'll be a regular, but I'm definitely not there yet.
I mean, every time I've watched, I feel like you've gotten a lot of love too. Like, they're not being nice to you, like just letting you win or whatever. But I feel like you get a lot of respect every time you're up there. So that's dope to see.
Thank you. Yeah. I know it's fun. It's so surreal to me too. That show is so popular. And like, I give so much credit to Tony Reality and the producer, Aaron Solomon. They created this, right? Like this is their baby and people grew up with it. Like you'd probably go home after school and watch it. It was routine television for so many people. And the reason they love it is it's so dependable. Like you know what you're going to get and it's going to be a fun, entertaining, vibrant watch. And so just to be a part of the family, like feels really great. And then to like, if you have one point that makes Tony laugh or you feel like you got a couple points, you're like, holy shit, I made it.
Man, where I'm like really, really fascinated is like, for example, the music production. I don't even know where I would begin. If someone gave me a beat and lyrics, I don't know the first thing about getting somebody on beat. I don't get the tempos. I don't know how you make a new beat. Like all that stuff is so fascinating to me, especially we've lived 2020 years on Earth. Well, after AD, and there's like new music still to this day being made, and I can't comprehend that.
Dude, it's actually, man. Look, we got to make a beat sometime together, man. It's super easy actually, especially now. Like it's just like even some of my kids, the students, they're doing class online now, and like they're in their music class at like public elementary school. They're like having to make these beats online,
Right?
And it really is as easy as like just kind of like learning to click some squares on a website. Right?
But I mean, like, do you have like a thing in your head that you're like, I want to match this tempo, or do you hear a song and you're like, oh, I think that if I sampled this part of it, that would be cool. Like, or do you just literally start typing stuff or playing different notes and stuff and like, oh, this would sound good together?
All of those things, all of them. So it just depends. You're like, I mean, that's the thing about music too, is that it's so like, I don't know, in our subconscious, you just feel it. Like when you hear a song that you like, it feels good. Like you're just going to move to it, or enjoy it. Like you can't kind of get out of the way of that unless you plug your ears or like leave the room. Like, you know? And that's the thing. Like if you enjoy music and you like listening to it, like you could definitely make it, because something is going to hit you. Just like, oh, I just love that drum beat, or like, that sample, or melody. It just the different ways, and like that's something I do when I'm making beats more specifically, is like, I noticed I was starting with the drums a lot, but like maybe I'm going to start with a sample today, or like only or work in reverse, like try to like get an acapella and build something around that. Like there's no rules, there's no wrong way to do it,
Right.
This is how it makes you feel at the end of the day. So
So where can people find your music, Calvin?
I'm on Mixcloud, DJ Cal.
Okay.
There's a new mix out right now. There's 2 mixes out right now, reggaeton and 90s hip hop.
Yeah. And so you also work parties too, like you'll do kids parties, bar mitzvahs,
I do everything.
anything with children. It sounds like you will do and invite me to.
Anything and anywhere, man. I DJ'd a wedding in the Dominican Republic.
What?
And that was
right. I remember that.
That was insane. That was insane.
Yeah.
We had the hotel guests. They told me to keep the volume at a certain level, and I completely ignored it and pretended I didn't speak English. So I turned it all the way up. So hotel guests are coming out to where the wedding is. Employees of the hotel are on their lunch break twerking on the dance floor.
Get out of here.
And they definitely were fired. They for sure were fired. They lost their jobs. Because I was playing YG and all types of shit out there. It's fun though. It's fun to get out on the road, and I'm sure you guys can relate to that. When you guys are in a different city that you've never been to before.
Would you? I'm sorry, Corde. Your internet, right? Your internet's tripping right now. I'm sorry. What? This is my fucking show, bro. You gonna show me some respect on my show? What the fuck? What the fuck? I'm not gonna take this slander on my own show. I think that comedy, going back to like our passions, I think it'll be a little bit better. I think people are going to be tired of the same old comics, and they're going to be looking to more original people, because I mean everything's going to be about COVID for 2 years,
at least the next 2 years. Yeah.
Right. Sure. And that's, I've never been one to make the same joke as everybody else. And so I just think that this is the time where the more unique comedians,
we're all going to be like Carlos Mencia, stealing each other's jokes.
Hey, you said it, man. You
just fucking, hey, uncle, if you see this, I'm just fucking around. So Pedro, Mencia's my uncle. That's why I made
seriously?
Hilarious. Yeah.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Man, I feel like, man, all right, whatever, you brought it up. Looking at it, I think he got like...
Bro, he got fucking murdered, bro.
I think he got murdered for something that a lot of comedians do.
Well, one, that specific joke, building the wall, I mean, one, it's very common, especially if we're all looking at the same news. But that joke alone, 11 other comics did it, including D.L. Hughley.
Yeah.
The same joke. The thing is, one, so Joe Rogan and my uncle, they were friends at the Comedy Store.
Right.
But just like every comic, this is why I don't really hang out with comics, because the level of hate, like once you start to make it, that's when everybody starts to hate. So that's what happened. Once he got his Comedy Central show, that's when he started hating, and then they made the video. The only joke, and I don't want to say he stole it, maybe it's, you come across something you hear, was the Bill Cosby joke.
Right.
Where he talks about running the football and you're like, thanks, Mom. That's the only joke. You have to understand, my uncle's been doing comedy for 30 plus years. And one joke ruined his whole career. And I don't want to say it even ruined it, because before this, he was still selling out.
Right.
So it's just like we feed into things and we're so quick to like, especially, and it's so fucked up because it's during the internet age. And it was the height of all the height. So it was just like, he's the poster child of stealing jokes. Like, fuck Amy Schumer.
That's what I'm saying. There's so many comics do it. Do you think? Okay, now this is the easy soft toss to y'all. But do you think that race had to do anything with why people came for him so hard? Like, obviously, Joe Rogan was a very polarizing figure. I have my own feelings towards Joe Rogan, but I've never met him, and I don't want to ruin my chances to meet him. But it just felt like disproportional how hard people came down on Carlos Mencia versus every other comic that has done it before and done that in the past.
He was the first. That's why he is the poster child of stealing jokes, because like I heard a podcast with Joe Rogan and I forgot who else, but they were talking about my uncle, but they were also talking about Robin Williams, because Robin Williams was still jokes too. But what he would do, this is true stories, he would be in the back of the club, and if he liked the joke, he'll write that person a check and just give it to them and be like, that joke is mine, and walk away.
Wow. So that's not stealing, but that's not stealing though.
I mean,
it's paying somebody to write.
Yeah, no, but he's not saying, hey, I'll pay you to write. He's just saying, here's the check, like, get the fuck out now. So I get what you're saying, but damn, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, my bad.
No, it's all good. With that being said, he was trying to defend Robin Williams, saying it was a different era. I'm like, but it's still stealing, like, regardless of what era it's in, So that's just my take on it.
I think it's not how I operate. I had this joke. I once had this joke about the movie Superman Returns, the one with the dude Brandon Routh, and it was like it ended up being very similar to a Ty Barnett joke that I had never heard him say. But once another comic told me that Ty does a joke just like that, I dropped that joke and never done it again. So, that's how I operate with mine. And
me too.
I would certainly call somebody out if I thought they stole a bit of mine. But it depends on the situation. Like if guys hang out together or on shows a lot together, and all of a sudden somebody is doing something, then it's easier to track than like if it's somebody you've never met. And because people can come up independently, like I mentioned with the story with Godfrey, the first night I was on mushrooms, he never seen me, I never seen him, but we took the same take on this one thing, right? But I do distinguish between and first of all, with regards to your uncle, like I've never met him or worked with him, so I could never comment on it personally. I just knew that a lot of comics I respected had things to say. As far as race, it seemed like the other big Latin comics weren't cool with him either, or had things to say about him as well. So I couldn't exactly call it a race thing. I think what really happened, like you said, you said poster child, but going back to the NBA, he almost got posterized in that video because he was the first person to get called out like that. In that way, so aggressively, like, and Joe Rogan paid, like he was banned from the Comedy Store for a while for it. So it's not like the venue endorsed it or anything like that.
True.
And I felt like they stood behind Carlos in that way. But there is a thing, like I am sensitive about stealing jokes. And I'm also like, I'm the kind of guy that doesn't want to do a joke that everybody else is doing. So, that's part of the work to me. And dudes hate each other once you start making it. You know what I mean? That's just not just the cops, but the homies you got to watch.
It's true.
Well, okay. So, editorialize it a little bit then. Like, you mentioned Indianapolis earlier. Why not move the entire Big Ten to rent out? That would be a boom for the Indianapolis community. They shift them to all online learning. Like why wouldn't that work for the Big Ten?
I think they're afraid eventually to lose the argument that these guys are amateurs, because you could say you're going to give them online classes and they're going to play somewhere, and that way they won't get sick. But really, when you boil it all down, like, does Penn State want basketball players to have a good experience? Yes. But really, they just want the money. Like, if football wasn't getting any money, they'd be like, we'll see you guys next year. So to me, and I could be wrong because I am not the smartest person in the world.
Right.
That, if you take all these kids to Indy and then they make you a bunch of money and you're like, oh, we gave you online classes. At some point, somebody with a lawyer is going to show up and say, I don't think this is how this works. And I think to a certain extent, there's a fear there that they lose that argument. And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but I'm not the person writing the checks.
Have you heard anything on college bubbles, Karisa, that would or wouldn't work?
Yeah, everything Ben said is true, is about why it's probably not already a serious conversation. But I think the bubbles do work. And I think the difference between basketball and football is, to Ben's point, with football, you're only playing one game a week, right? So you can't put these players in a bubble because they're going to be in a bubble for 6 months by the time you get all the games in and all that.
Right.
With basketball, you could do it more of a tournament style. You can have a condensed season. You're not going to have as many Cinderella teams for sure, but you can at least take the top tier teams, do a tournament, get conference championships, have a March Madness tournament. It's a little bit easier given the logistics of the actual sport and how often you can play. So I think it's possible, but I think for political reasons, it's not being taken as seriously as a contender for an option. And that's why I know those discussions are happening, but they keep running into the same issues that Ben just mentioned. But as far as player health goes, it's kind of a no-brainer because how you kicked off the podcast, it's working for the NHL, it's working for the NBA.
Yeah.
Why can't it work for college students?
The lack of experience in America is like no other. My job, corporate America, I remember, I'll never forget this. I tweeted about this. I got the tweet. I'll find it. When I was wearing a hoodie at work. I remember I walked into this lady's office. She looked me in the eye. I watched her eyes go from my eyes to my shoes, back up to my eyes. I walked out of the office. 10 minutes later, she's like, yeah, we have a no hoodie policy. Take the hoodie off. I was like, okay. I took the hoodie off. And I looked directly to my left. My coworker, white woman, wearing the hoodie. I took a picture of her wearing the hoodie.
Yep.
I took a picture and I was just like, I feel like some not sitting well with me. I'm not sitting well with me. And that's the thing. People, that's racism. There's no other underlining it, because what is a hoodie?
Yo, I sound crazy to my friends and work and my coworkers when they all do Casual Friday, and I'm like, I don't think you're ready for Casual Friday for me. Or let's all hang out for happy hour. I'm like, I don't really want to get a couple drinks in me and let you really hear me. Like, I don't. The thing I hate hearing the most at this point in 2020 is I had no idea. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
I had no idea.
Mike, I'm sorry, Mike. Why don't you jump in here, and then we probably should try to wrap this up soon. This is not at all the conversation I wanted to have, but this is the conversation that we needed to have, just with everything going on. And I hope we do get a part 2. But Mike, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I would like to take a second shot at the action because I had a revelation when y'all was talking, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say a slight parable. On a magic mushroom trip, walking to Santa Monica, and while I was there, I got to the edge of the beach, and when I got to the beach, my back was facing like the pier, and the front of my body was facing towards the vast, infinite everythingness of the sea and the sky. And the sea and the sky were both black, so it looked like I don't know if you guys have ever, whatever, but like it just looked like infinite. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Oh my God, like that's God. You know what I'm saying? This is God. You know what I mean? Like my chest opened, the wind was coming in, and it was just so beautiful. It was so pure. And I had to get to the edge of the world to feel that. Now I walked back into the pier, and I'm talking to my friend who was with me on this journey. And as we're talking, we're talking and we're streaming this consciousness, we're going back and forth in this exchange. We're tapped in. As we walk into the pier, we feel a frequency barrier around us I could not hear what he was saying when I put foot on solid ground. Like he was not speaking words, and we could not hear each other. We actually had to readjust our frequency from nature into society, which led me to believe in that moment, like, wow, there is a frequency barrier on this earth and on society. And in order to, so then boom, I was like, damn, that's crazy. So I walk further and I see street musicians playing. And the street musicians were penetrating this frequency barrier with high vibrations. Mm-hmm. Or around this frequency barrier, this frequency penetrator, which was this live music moment, were a part of this. So with that, the second point that I figured out was, yes, we live in a frequency barrier, but yes, we can actually penetrate it as well. Boom, revelation. The thing was, it's like, okay, the world right now is constructed to compress our frequency, our vibration, our energy, our connection to God, right? Our connection to love. And everything within that frequency barrier makes us hostile and creates all the madness that is this Babylon that we're living in. And so when I was like, so in that moment, a feeling of the thought came to me was like, to change this world, we have to master it. We have to master this physical world that was constructed by a human, just like we can construct it. We have to master the world that exists and recreate it to be a world that's more in alignment with nature, sustainability, love, God, and all these other things. Mm. So I say that to say, we have to master this game in this society as a people. We have to, one of the things we have to do is play the game better and play it well. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's this book called Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. And it's about and it's a national plan to empower Black America. A lot of the reason why we are seen as worthless is because in general, we are the lowest socioeconomic class in America. And that's why our value, because I don't think white people are some white people are racist, but more than anything, white people are capitalists as Americans, you know what I mean? And that's the language that they understand more than race. They understand
money
and wealth more than they do race.
Right.
As a black people in America, one of the things that we can do is become better at playing the game of wealth and increasing our own social economic power. By increasing our own power within ourselves, it's going to require healing, and it's going to require us to tap in and to educate ourselves on the system that's oppressing us. There's a rule book to it, and we can find that. We have to know all the rules to break them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the amount of people to me that are, I had no idea it's bad, are like just making me like. Nothing new is happening, only that these people feel a lot more comfortable about speaking out. But they weren't born yesterday, right? Like this isn't Nazi Germany where all of a sudden they're blaming their issues on black people. You know what I'm saying? They've had this hatred towards black, Latinos, all people of color, really, anybody that wasn't white. And it's I don't know how Joe Biden doesn't just say to Trump last night at the debate, "Are you an idiot? Do you not know how America was founded on immigration?" Right? And he's talking about we got to shut everybody from coming in here. That it's honestly, this is why I don't talk about it too much, because there's so many things that just don't make sense. That it's like we're having these philosophical, high level conversations. It's basic human rights.
Right, 100, 1,000. I couldn't agree more.
That's all it is. Yeah.
And I mean, Chaz, you're up in the Pacific Northwest. It's not so sweet for us up there.
Nah, it's not. I mean, the people have been cool. But yeah, man, I get some random questions about like, oh, like your hair and like this. And how come like someone's like, oh, talking about driving. And it's like, oh, the guy is like, I do all the driving. She doesn't like to drive. And she's like, oh yeah, like I've noticed that with like black people, the woman drives. Like, why is that? I was like, I mean, you actually want a response right now, or like, what are you doing here? Like,
with black people, the woman drives.
Yeah, apparently I always see the black guy in the passenger side, not the driver's seat.
You know, our license be suspended and shit. Yeah.
Oh man, if that ain't some Bay Area, if that ain't some Bay Area, I don't know.
Oh my God,
that's hilarious.
You know, coming from Trinidad and Tobago, I mean, I know that's a big question, but you know, just in short, just like what has that experience been like for this past 2020 dealing with race relations in America? I mean, like what is that like for you? Just witnessing all this explode, really.
I think it's very petty of us as human beings, because not even the dog cares about what color that female is.
Right, exactly.
And we are supposed to be the intelligent beings.
Right, exactly.
Planet.
Right.
And we are looking at the pigmentation of a skin and using that and living our lives around that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, that's the pettiest thing we could entertain.
I feel the same way, man. I feel the same way. Yeah. When it is your time to go, because we all will go at some point, what do you hope your legacy will be remembered as?
Man, and you hit me hard there. That word legacy carries so much weight. It is something that I think about every single day on a micro level with how my colleagues see me, and a macro level about how the world sees me. But the legacy, first and foremost, that I want to leave behind is the idea that what my children think of me as a father and what my wife thinks of me as a husband. I'm not at that point in my life yet, by any means. Like, I'm very much still swiping on Tinder.
So holla at Darrius, you know, if y'all see this.
So, like, you know, from that perspective, like, my legacy starts there, and that's the most foundational piece of what they see me as. And I want to be considered as a warm person, as a guiding person who took all of those positive lessons that my grandma gave to me and my mom and my dad gave to me once they brought me in, and applied that to my children without all of the unnecessary harshness that came along with it.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need to.
Do you think
like,
that's possible though? I'm sorry to cut you off, but like I toy with that all the time. Like, is that possible to give that lesson to our future children without giving them the traumatic experience as well that they had to go through?
Bruh, like when I talk about my grandma and this mystique of her as a person, like people create this idea of her as this infallibly human and this angel of a human being. Like my grandma beat my ass on a regular basis. Like just she got to the point where she was giving me preemptive ass whoopings for things she considered to be possibilities of stuff that I would do in the future. And it was just like, that's just how she was raised. It's like the only way to keep these kids in line is to beat their ass.
Right.
And we had this weird paradigm shift in our relationship when I was about 16 or like 14 or 15, where it's like she stopped whooping my ass and started talking to me like I'm a maturing partial adult. And I learned more in that time between 14 and 18 as to the consequences of my actions than I ever got from just getting preemptive ass whooping. So I'm of the mindset where like you can't do that. Like it's hard.
Right.
And one thing that nobody ever considers when you talk about things like spankings and any type of corporal punishment is that it's a method in which you use when you don't have any other resources.
Right.
And a part of why I work so hard is that I want to give my children the type of resources where I can be the best parent that I can be.
Yeah.
Where it's not like I'm working 16-hour days and 2 jobs, making minimum wage, and now I have to come home because you call some kid a dickhead at school, and now I got teachers calling me and all this other stuff. So I'm frustrated. So I'm gonna beat your ass because of it, because that's a lot easier than talking to you about why you shouldn't say that.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So I don't want to be in that position where that's my only option, where I can still be firm and still create boundaries, but also do it in a way that's not traumatizing my kids along the way.
Right.
That I don't feel like that is a necessary prerequisite to parenting.
Okay.